Guns. I got them. You need them. Welcome back, Guardians, to another Dream Team video. I'm your humble host, Meeson777. Welcome to episode 6 of Custom D2 Exotics. We are going to cut back just a little bit today on the amount of exotics that we are doing because A, it's busy right now, finals week, and B, because I've got a few ideas I still want to flesh out a little bit more. Be sure to stick around towards the end of the video if you want to see who got the featured exotic idea for this episode. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into it. If you're new to the channel, of course, be sure to subscribe and leave a like, blah, 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 blah. You know how it works. All right, here we go. Very first gun on the list is called the Nail. It's an exotic kinetic auto rifle. The flavor text for this reads, wait for it. The exotic perk for this weapon is called Strafe Rounds. Hold the trigger to fire sticky rounds, release to detonate them, and they detonate all at once. So it's a 450 RPM. You can already see the design on this thing looks hella cool. The places where I am able to get this stuff off of Google and such is really cool. I wish I had an artist for this one, but anyway, let's keep moving. Oh, I deserve a downvote for that. 10 or more detonations cause stagger and kills refill the magazine. The idea behind this weapon is that, well, just like the name implies, you stick a target, you move around the other corner while you're still holding the trigger, you release, they explode. You might catch somebody off guard with the amount of damage that you're able to deal to them. Also, because of the way that these bullets work, they would have effectively infinite range, because the explosions themselves obviously push that damage out for a really far distance. Now, the PvP players at home might be thinking to themselves, might that just be just a little much? I don't think so. These don't have the best TTK, and at further ranges, it's going to be somewhat difficult to actually land like consistent damage on a target. Not to mention landing headshots is going to be the way you're going to be able to deal that extra damage, so yeah, I don't think so. I think this would be pretty fair. Obviously, the balance between damage from the gun itself or damage from the explosion would have to be some way of balancing it out, but I think this would be really cool. I really like this idea, and I baked in a little bit of that PvE goodness of causing stagger to a target, which, of course, for unstoppable champions is exactly what you're trying to do, because you can fire 10 shots, release the trigger, have them all explode at once, and then that target is staggered, allowing your fire team to, of course, deal extra damage to them, etc., etc. So I think incorporating more exotic that have some of those champion mods, I think this is a good way to do it right here. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. This one for sure was one of my favorites. I both loved the design of this gun and the way that this gun would feel. I can already picture it in my head. Like, can you picture it in your head? You poke a target around the corner, you light him up a few times, he's about half health, you poke back around that corner, release the trigger, boom, he's gone, your ammo's refilled, and you're satisfied. Next up on our list is a weapon that's a bit dangerous in terms of its design, so you'll have to let me know if you can think of any things that explicitly break this weapon here. This is called the Doppel. It's a void, fully automatic sidearm, those 450 round per minute sidearms. I guess we're in a 450 mood today. I just now, as I'm recording this, realized the first weapon was also a 450. But anyway, the flavor text for this reads, "'Twas brilling in ye slithy troves." I slaughtered that. It's a Jabberwocky reference for you educated folks. It's another literary reference. I'm just gonna keep going before I embarrass myself further. The exotic intrinsic perk for this weapon is the only exotic perk that it has. It's called Mimicry. It inherits the traits of your other two equipped weapons. Now think about that for a second. By itself, it has 0 perks, but it will inherit whatever perks your other two weapons have, meaning that you can build some really interesting stuff with this. If you want to do like both Kill Clip and Rampage, sure, go for it. Some questions may come up of like, what about like double perks? What if you have like, say, double Kill Clip? Does it stack? No. What about certain perks that are specific to a weapon archetype? Will it have any effect? No. For example, sword perks by their very nature can't be triggered on a sidearm, so it just wouldn't work. There might be some other interesting instances where, say, like Headseeker might work for a bit, because it's essentially like a small increase in damage for the duration of the rest of that burst, so it might cause a slight increase in, like, say, headshot damage, but you'll have to let me know if you can think of any weapon combinations that explicitly break it. Now, I know every single one of you are going to come up with a combination of perks and such that make it strong, and that's the idea, right? It's an exotic weapon. With some clever building, you gotta, kind of move your other weapons around in order to make the mimicry work real well. Obviously, you'll be able to come up with something strong, but I'm talking something that explicitly, it's like, oh yeah, that would definitely break the game. And, like I said, certain weapon perks that are explicit to a certain archetype wouldn't work either. Stacking wouldn't work. It's carefully chosen to be in the energy slot as well, right? So that you can't do things like the Not Forgotten, and obviously it's an exotic, so you can't stack exotic perks. Like I said, this one's kind of dangerous because any type of future designs that they would have, they have to keep this weapon in mind, but I think this would be really cool. Let me know if you can think of any combination of perks so that would be like just absolutely game-breakingly busted. Second to last on our list is a weapon called the Maiden Voyage. Now, I must say, I'm both proud of myself and pissed because this weapon was designed, you'll have to take my word for it, I know I have no proof of this, but this weapon was designed before the heir apparent, alright? You're just gonna have to take my word for this. But anyway, let's roll forward. You probably already know where I'm going with this. Maiden Voyage is a special ammo machine gun. Ooh, interesting. That sounds kind of busted. I'll explain why I don't think it is in just a second. The flavor text for this reads, "She began to soar, but soon our tears were turned to weeping." The kind of idea that the lore, if you want to build up, is that this was like a ship gun's weapon that after a huge devastating crash, you can obviously write some nice fluffy lore with that. The Guardians picked up the weapon and said, hey, we're going to use this thing to get revenge. I love the idea behind the lore of this one. Obviously, you guys can let me know if you have any better ideas for this, but let's move on to the rest of the perks. I think the rest of the perks are where you're mostly interested in. The intrinsic perk is called Torrent. All shots are fed directly from reserves. Now, this is something that I should bring up right now. Would this weapon be overpowered in PvP? And the thing I immediately come to mind, the thing that immediately I think of whenever I think of a special weapon heavy machine gun is, well, we've got trace rifles in the game. I think 900 RPM machine guns are probably one of the worst, if not the worst, in terms of like PvP weapons for heavy. Maybe I'm wrong on that. You guys can obviously let me know, but they're kind of hard to use. They're a little bit inconsistent. Maybe we could pull back the damage as a whole, like the regular impact on this weapon. We could pull it back in order to, balance it out a bit. I think the secondary perk helps out as well, which is Sorrow. Continued fire overloads and blinds enemies. This weapon fires slower over time. So now you kind of can get the full picture. So this weapon has an initial burst of damage from the 900 RPMs that it's able to deal out, and then if you continue to hold the trigger, it essentially starts to slow down, and then it starts to deal what is essentially blinding grenade rounds, like smaller versions of it, right? Because we don't want that to go crazy, and overload rounds to targets. So the DPS would lower down just a bit if you continue to hold the trigger using that Torrent perk, but you start to get some of that trade-off of, okay, I'm starting to blind enemies, it's making them harder to shoot back at me. I think in terms of the way this would work in PvE, this would be so cool, because initially if you're firing at an overload champion, you would be able to slightly beat their overload health regen. As soon as that perk triggered, then it would just kind of like slowly eat away at the rest of their health there, right? You could kind of like wind it up, it didn't have that initial big burst of damage, lowering down their health just a bit, and then the perk would trigger, and then you would chew up the rest of it. I think this would be really, really cool in PvE. PvP, I think this could work. I think if we were careful about it, I think this could work. If the weapon itself had pretty terrible handling, maybe we could pull back on the impact and such. I think it could work. Trace rifles aren't that good. I think this would be a way to get like a pseudo trace rifle into the exotic slot, into our Guardians for PvP, and make it interesting. Obviously, the ability to blind Guardians as well would be pretty cool. And featured exotic of this week, drum roll please. I don't have any one person to credit for this one. This is actually kind of a group effort. This was a group project and all of you passed. I cannot tell you how hard it was to find a good picture of these. These are exotic class items. I call them Pride and Honor. They're for all of your different, Guardian needs, whether they be Hunter, Warlock, or Titan. The flavor text for this reads, "Return Stronger," a line borrowed from Lord Saladin. But anyway, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's an exotic class item. First question some people always bring up whenever we talk about exotic class items is, would it take up your exotic slot? In this particular instance, yes, and you'll see why, because this actually does have an exotic perk. This isn't just for looks. The intrinsic perk to this exotic armor is called Champion. Use vendor tokens to re-roll this item's stats. Now here's the idea of this one. So this item, this exotic class item, it works just like normal armor. It has stat allocations just like normal armor would. It would range anywhere from 45 to say 65, right? And every time you use the champion perk, it would consume, let's say, 50 of your vendor tokens. Now that might seem a little steep, but for the people who have been playing this game forever, like myself, who has literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands, I have more than 20,000 Crucible tokens, and that's after going on a binge of just deleting through tokens, like just eating through my tokens. I still have thousands of these tokens. This would be a way for those players who really like those like triple stats in say PvP to really dial in on this. Now they have to decide, do I want triple 100s, let's say in PvP, or do I want my stompies? What's more important to me? Now, obviously, you're getting a huge boost in stats. You're getting plus 60-ish total to your overall stats, right? So that's a huge boost to your, like, just, you're going to have a lot more stats on your hand. You might even be able, with that amount, to get, like, maybe quadruple or maybe quintuple 100s if you're really careful. I could definitely see something like that happening. But anyway, all that to say, this gives both a economy sync for players who are veterans to the game, and also introduces a way to play what is essentially like neutral game heavy, right? Focus explicitly on your stats. Don't worry about getting any of those exotic perks, which, I don't know, there's a trade-off there. You guys have to let me know. Do you think this is too much of a trade-off, too little of a trade-off? Anyway, this, like I said, this was a group project. A lot of people suggested this one, so I'm just going to give you all the credit on this one. This cool idea, right? I've seen I've taken pieces here and there. The champion reroll idea was mine in particular, but you guys all wanted some type of exotic class item, so here you go. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, of course, let us know. If you have any ideas of your own, let us know. Make sure that you're subscribed as well, because we are still pretty damn small in comparison to the much larger YouTubers out there, and we would love to get these ideas onto Bungie's table so you guys can help share it around, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, enjoy finals week, or maybe if you're done, congrats, you made it through. Bless your faces, and deuces.